Hey again, I'm Josh Steger from the Allen Centennial Garden. You joined me last time in sowing a meadow. Today we are going to be making leaf mulch. Leaf mulch is a good alternative to bark mulch because it's free, it's lightweight, and it adds nutrients back to your soil. So join me today on how to make leaf mulch. So why do we mulch? We mulch for several reasons. One, we keep weeds out of our garden beds. If we have less weeds, we have less competition for our perennials to grow. It keeps moisture in the soil, especially if it's a very dry spot. We also do it for looks. We like that fresh, clean mulch look right after it's been applied to our gardens. And lastly, it brings nutrients back into the soil. Whether it's bark mulch or leaf mulch, over time, you will have nutrients back into the soil. So as I apply this leaf mulch, I want to talk about some of the pros of leaf mulch, some good things about leaf mulch. So one being, it's very light. Bark mulch is fairly heavy when you have to apply it and just haul it around. Leaf mulch is very, very light. This leaf mulch is actually kind of broken down over the course of the entire season, so it almost looks like soil at this point, which is what it eventually becomes. But so this leaf mulch is very light. I said it also is, it reduces your carbon footprint by using leaf mulch. So if you have all these trees in your space that you would generally bag up and haul off to the dump or a compost site, this way you're reducing your carbon footprint by keeping everything in your own space without moving it anywhere else. And this is also local. This is coming directly from your own space. It's not coming from, across the state or even another state where it could be issues with invasive plants or seeds or even organisms. So those are some pros of leaf mulch. So there are some cons of leaf mulch. So one being, because it is so light, and if it's not applied heavily, it could blow away with strong winds if you applied in the fall or in the spring. The other thing is leaf mulch, because it breaks down so quickly, you're probably going to have to reapply it more often than bark mulch. But in a good way, by it breaking down quicker, that means it's breaking down quicker into your soil, which means that it's bringing more nutrients to your plants. So I want to talk about some of the pros about bark mulch. So an alternative to leaf mulch is bark mulch. It's something that I personally don't like to use, but there are some benefits to it. So as you can see here, this one's actually kind of compacted down a little bit, but the bark mulch does last a lot longer than leaf mulch does, so you won't have to apply it ever so often as much as leaf mulch. And it also eventually does break down into the soil and makes available nutrients for plants in the space. And it also holds a lot of moisture in as well. So like there are cons for leaf mulch, there are also cons for bark mulch. So one being, if you want to take a look at what this bark mulch looks like right now, this was applied probably about 2 months ago, and you can see how much it's compacted into the soil. It's almost created this, you can see, layer on the surface of the soil, which means it's not very breathable. And another con is you can see it's also faded out quite a bit. The sun has faded it out. It's also something that you have to reapply every year, which can also add up in money. It has a higher or a larger carbon footprint, so you have to think about all of the processing mulch has to go through. It has to be broken down. It has to be generally dyed, which gets into another con. So it's definitely a larger carbon footprint than leaf mulch would be. And speaking of dyeing, a lot of chemicals are used to dye the mulch in various colors, which is something that's not really a natural look that we're going for. And also, a lot of plants aren't used to living with bark mulch. I don't know why we started gardening with bark mulch. I think it was a smart idea at one time, but I think as we are learning more about our gardens, bark mulch is not the best for our plants. And I know there are better alternatives out there for it. So if I haven't convinced you to use leaf mulch in your own garden, maybe the simplicity of making it will. So there are 4 ways that we found to make leaf mulch. And the first one we are going to do is making leaf mulch with a weed whacker. So in this project, you will need leaves, some safety goggles, a garbage can. It can be plastic or metal. It doesn't have to be like a specific size. I guess a larger size you can fit more leaves in. And of course a weed whacker. So this is the first method, or first way should I say, of making leaf mulch with the weed whacker method. What we're gonna do is fill this garbage can up about halfway or so with these collected leaves. We got lucky, these leaves are actually fairly dry. You can use fresh leaves that are still out, that you just collected off the ground, and they don't have to be dried out quite yet. What we're doing in this project is breaking them down, assisting the process of breaking them down. All right, so that's about halfway, maybe a little bit more. I have a weed whacker right here, and I'm gonna start, and it's kind of like an immersion blender. If you haven't used an immersion blender before, you basically fill the container up, you immerse your blender or your tool into the container, and then you just give it a go. So after a couple seconds, you can see how much the weed whacker has actually broken this down. I probably could have done this a little bit longer, but I didn't want it to be too broken down, but you can kind of see what it's done. This is really beautiful material. So that is your first method. Okay. Another method of making leaf mulch is using a mower with a bag attachment. So the beauty of having a bag attachment on your mower is you don't have the hassle of raking up all these leaves beforehand, and your mower will chop them up for you and bag them up for you. So let's get started on making leaf mulch with a mower. If you are looking to apply leaves in the fall without composting them first, you can leave them whole and apply a thick layer in your beds. Come spring, you can use a mower without a bag attachment and mow right over them to create mulch. Make sure you cut them before any spring bloomers show up.
Quick work of that.
So if you do not have a mower or a weed whacker, I have some alternatives for you. So this next project we're gonna make is a leaf cage. And a leaf cage is really nice because all you have to do is collect all the leaves, and then we place them in the cage, and then we let them sit for the majority of the year. The leaves will be done in about ready in about 6 months to a year. What they're doing is breaking down in order to nourish your soil, create a mulch, keep moisture in. So like I said, this is a really good alternative to folks who do not have a mower or a weed whacker. The things that you will need for this project are bamboo stakes, chicken wire, a mallet. I'm not going to use a mallet since our ground is fairly wet still. I think I'll be able to get these bamboo stakes in without any hassle. And then if you have any wire around your house or any fishing line, any type of string to fasten your chicken wire to your bamboo stakes. I actually have a really easy way to attach the bamboo stakes to your chicken wire without having to use some type of wiring or string. So let's get started on this project.
And you like going in the ground. You're like, I'm really strong. And the ground is wet, so I can do it. And then you're like, nope.
That would be really funny. Outtakes.
Ouchie.
Outtakes.
Are you tired? This is a big outing for you. Yep, I haven't done nothing in a couple of days.
I am using 4 bamboo stakes and chicken wire to assemble the leaf cage. The best way of assembling this is to put all 4 stakes in the ground first and add chicken wire after. In this clip, our chicken wire is fairly low. I'd recommend using chicken wire that's taller or doubling it up so you can hold more leaves in the cage. I weave the bamboo stakes into the chicken wire without using any string or wire. Use what you have on hand to make it easier for yourself and your wallet. It doesn't look perfect, but it definitely does the job for what we need it to do. Now that our cage is all finished, we're going to fill it with our leaves. Now these are the whole leaves that we collected earlier. And going to throw them in the cage. I want to make a note, this cage is fairly shallow. We were just kind of using what we have. But if you are going to be collecting a lot of leaves in your space, I would definitely double up on the chicken wire and make this maybe 2 stories instead of 1. Now that the leaves are in the cage, we need to wet them down. This is a small amount of leaves and they are dry as a bone. We want to make sure that they stay wet because we want this breakdown process to start happening. They are going to get wet over the course of the fall and the winter, but I'm just going to get this process going. It's really important to just get them wet. So I just have some water and I'm just going to add some water to the leaf mixture. Throughout the season, you want to toss it with a pitchfork or some other material. Like I said, the reason why we're wetting this material is because we want the breakdown process to have a better chance of breaking down. And by using these dried leaves, we can create a really beautiful leaf mold, which is something I'm going to talk about in the next video. Now, if you do not have a lawnmower, a weed whacker, or have the materials to make a leaf cage, this is your last chance to make leaf mulch. I'm just kidding. So the last step to making leaf mulch or an alternative is creating leaf mulch in a plastic bag. So the materials you're gonna need is a plastic garbage bag. It doesn't matter if it's black. It would prefer that it is black so it can absorb a lot more heat that way. And a pitchfork and your leaves. Let's get started with making leaf mulch in a garbage bag. some of the video I was talking about making leaf mulch and also making leaf mold. I'll tell you the difference between each of them. So leaf mulch is generally leaves that are freshly fallen from a tree and that have been either processed with your lawnmower or your weed whacker, and that you generally lay right to rest in its space. Leaf mold is something that we are making in our cage, our leaf cage, or in this garbage bag right here. So we're letting these leaves deteriorate, break down over time in a heated space. I guess thus composting. They're molding and they're breaking down further to create more nutrients, a more nutrient dense compost for your garden. So we might get questions and inquiries about what leaf mold and what leaf mulch are, how they're different, and here's your answer. So if you want to take a look closer, these are the physical differences. So right here, this is leaf mulch. This is what we've been creating the entire show so far. It's been processed mechanically. You can still make out that these are leaves. In fact, if you want to take a look over to your right, this is leaf mold. So this is something that's been broken down chemically from microorganisms and pathogens. It's further in the breakdown process than leaf mulch is. So I want to say leaf mulch acts as a nice barrier to a plant bed. It retains moisture, or should I say not retains, but it keeps moisture in. And your leaf mold will actually do the same thing. It does act as a really nice barrier. We actually used it in the spring in all of our garden beds. And I also want to make note that we do plant a lot of our plants closer together, so that also acts as a nice weed barrier if you're not using as much mulch. So those are the differences between leaf mulch and leaf mold. I also want to add that leaf mulch, because it is broken down, it will add nutrients back into the soil a lot quicker than leaf mulch will. And it also adds a lot of bulk and surface area to your existing plant beds. So when is the best time to apply leaf mulch? Based off of our experience, we actually applied ours in the spring of this year for many reasons. So we were looking to have that fresh look in the spring. We actually had the leaf mulch delivered in the fall of the previous year. We applied in the spring for that fresh look. And we also did an ecological cleanup. So that's actually another topic we're going to talk about in our next show. But by applying the leaf mulch in the spring, we were able to keep the carbon footprint down because we were able to cut down other plants that were in the area, and then we covered them with the leaf mulch. So when to apply also depends on the method that you've been making your leaf mulch. Let's say if you were to take whole leaves from your space and rake them up and place them in your beds, you would do that in the fall. And then in the springtime, when things are a little bit drier and there are no bulbs or any plants coming up yet, you can actually cut those leaves in place with your mower. Another example is if you are looking to make leaf mold and you want your leaves to be broken down a little bit more than leaf mulch, you would obviously apply that in the spring as well, because you are putting all your leaves in the leaf cage, or you're using the garbage bag to make the leaf mold. So then you would allow that time to break down, that 6 months to a year, and then you would apply those in the spring. So I received a really good question last week about using leaves that have disease or have a cosmetic condition. And I actually don't have a solid answer on that. I actually had to do a little bit of research. What I found is if you're using leaves that have disease on them, a lot of them remain in the leaf and they won't travel to any of your plants. And most of the time, like I said, a lot of them are cosmetic. If you had downy mildew on some of your leaves, which I don't believe you would really get on a lot of trees, you usually get those on grapes, on peonies, on a lot of edible crops, you would not want to use those in your beds, especially if it's an edible garden, because downy mildew does winter over. It can survive the winters. So if you are worried about a disease getting to your plants, I wouldn't worry about your perennials if you happen to have some type of cosmetic condition with your leaves. If anyone does know anything more about that topic or knows some more answers, please share it with the group. So I hope this last cast has inspired you to create leaf mulch of your own. Please join me in our last class, Ecological Cleanup, on October 22nd. Stay well.